And so, yeah, I'm going to talk about phase one of Canada One Winter, which has been the last 3 years, and Melissa's going to introduce phase two after lunch. And I'd like to acknowledge my co-author, Steve Fry, at Quante Incorporated, and an adjunct at Waterloo, that abstract for future reference. We've got a great team supporting the two people on the title slide, both at Quante in the government of Canada from sort of a subject expert perspective, and then academia, particularly the University of Toronto for climate modeling with Dick Beltier, a postdoc, and land surface modeling at Waterloo, and notably with Chris Fletcher. So I have a very brief amount of time to talk here, and if you want to know more about Canada One Water, Steve Fry gave an extended 40-minute presentation on the subject for World Water Day with the Canadian Water Resource. Oh God, there's something CWRA. Water Resources. There you go. And it's available on YouTube and the URL at the bottom of the slide there. And they're also through the Groundwater Geoscience Program YouTube channel. You can find other presentations. And or you can find some written documentation in plain language through the final report, which will come out next week or early June, and some progress water reports that are currently out as open files. So what's the rationale for Canada One Water? It's a national program, and it's really addressing 30 years of policy or governance research that has addressed continually the fact that Canada lacks a framework to understand changes in groundwater under any conditions, but notably under climate change. And that was more recently specifically identified in 2019 in Canada's changing climate. And you've all heard about the Canada Water Agency, and ironically, the Canada Water Agency stated quite clearly this winter that they really have a minimalistic approach and interest in groundwater currently. So highlighting the currentness of groundwater research at Canada, the Geological Survey. So the objective of Canada One Water is fairly minor. We just want to model the water cycle of all of Canada. And how are we going to do that? We took an enormous amount of time to set this exercise up, 3 years, effectively partitioned into 1-year increments, more or less, but data assembly stretched into, well, actually, in the beginning of year 3, model spin-up was started. And we are just really getting some model results out at the end of the project. And we're modeling the water cycle, but to do that, it's being split up into 3 very distinct modeling environments. We're looking at climatology through WRF, the Weather Research Forecasting Platform from NOAA, and that's downscaling global climate modeling data sets to regional scale with a real strong focus on the integration of lakes. Particularly the Great Lakes and associated lakes around the edge of the Canadian Shield, but also incorporating lakes that are over 10 square kilometers. To sort of look at energy transfer and evaporative processes, we're using the land community model, and those two models produce the forcing data for hydrogeosphere, which is an integrated groundwater surface water modeling environment, which is the baby of a quantum development from the University of Waterloo and spun off the private sector. You can see different resolutions for the different modeling environments, and they all have slightly different time steps also. The original plan for Canada One Water was to model all of Canada in one model realization. And foolishness of that approach, and decided to partition Canada into 7 major water domains, 6 for continental Canada, and then Baffin Island as its own entity. And they range in scale for Baffin Island from about 800,000 square kilometers. We modeled 20 kilometers offshore to up to 2.4, I think it is, million square kilometers. The Hudson there, 2.3. And we also include transboundary waters with the United States. So we're modeling 1 million square kilometers in the United States. That allows us to establish natural boundary conditions for the watersheds, and we force some data set from. We're also going to be looking at results on a watershed or basin scale, and within each of these 7 major domains, you can see the sort of watersheds that we're going to push out results for initially. And they range around 100,000 to 150,000 square kilometers, which is also commensurate with the scale or footprint of Grace Daily. So we should be able to actually get some really good constraints on the total water flux from Grace and see how that works with the numeric modeling results from hydrogeological. So we are just getting some initial results. This is the Pacific region domain, and these are sort of results average for that entire region in terms of actual inputs, land surface processing, evapotranspiration, stream flows, and groundwater surface water interaction, infiltration, and exfiltration. And what you're seeing in the graph there is the difference for mid-century and end of century compared as a percentage to historic conditions. You see generally things are wetting up in the Pacific, both slightly at mid-century and more extensively for late century. And then we're also going to be looking at these smaller watershed domains. And here we actually are looking at gauging information, both stream gauging information and groundwater information for monitoring well connectivity perspectives. So sort of surface water storage and subsurface storage. And you can see some seasonality changes in the water flux there at mid-century and end of century. The horizontal line in the graphs is the 0 line for historic conditions. These are average conditions over the climate land surface modeling in 20 years and a 1-year realization for HGS. And just to come back to transboundary watersheds then, and the value of this numeric framework at a national scale to look at issues in terms of cumulative effects or critical mineral prospectivity modeling, and then zooming in and the ability with this framework to really spin up nested models at relatively quick time step. And this just highlights the Rainy River watershed, which was IJC funded work. And we actually identified 5 abandoned mine sites or current mine sites and discretized tightly around those to look at, so that we would have the ability actually to look at a mixing flow cell approach to tracking water movement through the system. Early adapters, we've had a lot of interest from other government departments, provincial and federal, academia, both in the United States and Canada, and then some international interest in what we've been doing, which is in developing countries and potentially adaptation. All of the results are going to be published as open data licensed products through the GSC and then served on a Canada One Water data portal. And will for the next 5 years. And so in summary, I think we could say pre-2022, which has started. Framework and state of groundwater is unknown, and that's not me speaking, that's the changing climate report. At the end of phase 1, we have a national framework. We've harmonized, classified, and are pushing out data sets nationally. And we have an emerging perspective on groundwater knowledge. And by the end of this program cycle that Melissa's going to talk about this afternoon, we should be able to comment quite thoroughly on the state of groundwater in Canada. So thanks very much. And okay. There we go.